similar thing that I do with people. Like you're very graceful in sort of pointing out the things that are problematic, but you do it in a way that they can understand it or vibrationally kind of feel it and shift it a little bit. It's interesting. I do a similar thing. So I appreciate that. And you can feel free to point out where those, challenges are and where those things are, because that is so unusual, to find someone who can really see those things.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and incidentally, that's actually all I'm going for.
I thought so. Yeah. I could feel it. Yeah.
That's, I didn't understand it. I've been doing it most of my life. I didn't understand it until more recently.
Yeah.
Because the rest of it, like I can give a lot of practical advice, like on financial matters. I studied nutrition for years. I went through all these different disciplines. And so there's no shortage of that. Yeah. But then it's like anything else. It's like maybe they implement it, maybe they don't, maybe they get it, maybe they won't, Yeah. But if I can shift somebody's vibrational state and just change the way they see the world ever so slightly, right, that will have multiplicative benefits on their entire well-being.
Yeah.
That could change absolutely everything. So, so thank you for that. Because it's what I'm going for.
I've always felt that way. I have gotten stuck though in places. Do you know what I mean? Because you forget that you have amnesia, and then then you become at the effect of it, and then you pull yourself out, and then you fall back in, and then pull yourself out of the story.
And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. So that's why a lot of people need daily spiritual practices, so that they can put more spaciousness between the tendencies of the human mind and reflect or call into spiritual intention.
Yeah.
Because without it, you're just you're in go mode, you're on that treadmill, everything's going so fast, and then you're like, you have a bad day or you have a difficult sensation, it just automatically puts you back into maybe a victim complex or the feeling of abandonment. And then you need time to pull back out of it to gain the perspective, so that you can be more in acceptance of it, or even gratitude, which is even higher vibration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just started a spiritual practice again, more. I have a Christos energy, connection to the Christ, to Yeshua, to Sananda. And so that, like a direct line. So and for the longest time, like you explained to me, I had this problem with it and I couldn't figure it out. And then I was like really fierce defender. Well, Christ wasn't Christian, for God's sake. He was freaking Sephardic Jew, and he was a rebel, and then there's this like rebellious fire piece of me that, just had a problem with Christianity, but raised Quaker, and my mother was a theologian, and so very interested in spirituality and religion. But here I find myself now at this day, literally his face is up on my computer as we're talking. So he, it's more, what an incredible teacher, what an incredible being. And so now I'm being with him.
Perfect. Yeah, it's the essence of his teachings. It's not the letters. The words have been distorted too many times over in scripture. It's the ability to connect with the essence of what's being taught, which has survived over all these years. Yeah. Right? Like you read the Gospels and you can just connect with the experience. Right? Yeah. You can connect with the wisdom that's in there. Yeah. But if you get caught up, especially the Old Testament, if you get caught up in the letters, if you get caught up too much in the literal words as opposed to the energy of what's being communicated or what's being taught, then you'll get distracted.
Yeah.
And so what you're expressing is that you've probably, if you're young and the Quakers are observing a very strict kind of lifestyle or belief structure, it's more like the literal translation that's just distorted, right? Yeah. But if you get into the essence of it, like the feelings behind it, and you can see how magnanimous Christ was in his intention, his genuine desire to love and to heal.
Very pure, very, 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 pure, absolutely pure.
I know. Yeah. I'm Jewish. I love Christ's teachings.
Yeah.
Like there could not be a more profound example that I've come across as the actual living embodiment of spiritual intention. Yeah. And that's that comes back to the beginning of the conversation, is that he was able to find perfect alignment with his spiritual self, which allowed his human decisions to go ahead and live the life that was perfectly telegraphed or chosen prior to incarnation. most of us miss the signposts because there's indications everywhere trying to tell you which way to go. And then
Yeah.
most of us don't have the sacrifice necessary to give up on the egotic or the human self to move into that alignment.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in that time. I feel like I'm going through some kind of transformation. You can probably see it in the chart, but I feel like that, yeah, I'm starting to feel like a different person.
Yeah, it's weird. People contact me when there's an energetic vibe. Most of the people that come into my space, it's because they're looking to go much deeper.
Yeah.
Like I don't like to promote myself even as an astrologer anymore. It's just one more tool that I have at my disposal.
Of course.
But an astrologer, I would want more than anything to accentuate the journey that you're already on and help encourage you further along it.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
beautiful.
Yeah, metaphorically, I often describe it as if the world, most of the people you know and exist within like a valley and the sun is shining and they're picnicking and they're playing on their phones and they're hanging out, maybe when the virus is gone, right? They're all just socializing and they're enjoying their life. And then there's a few select people that can't quite understand why, but they're being called away from the collective.
Yeah, I feel that very, very, very much.
And as they get called further and further, they end up meandering and it calls them to a running like river or stream. And it's like the waters are really running and they can't quite see to the other side because it's just a big body of water, but they know that something is calling them to go further. And so in a mystical sense, the more they feel that yearning to go across the water, it almost as if it manifests a stone that appears right in front of them. And so they step onto that stone, and no sooner do they step on the first stone than a second stone appears and a third stone. And every so often you get stuck on a stone or the water starts to run faster or you get nervous and so you go back onto the riverbanks.
Yeah.
Right? Or sometimes you're like, you know what, that's just not working for me. You go all the way back to the valley and you hang out with the people where you originated because they're also content there in their own way of distracting contentment.
Yeah.
But if you're called to the riverbanks, eventually that call gets louder and louder, ideally, and you keep heeding the call until you make it to the other side.
Yeah.
And so in a kind of a metaphorical sense, I stand somewhere, if there are, say, 10 stones to traverse the river, I maybe stand on the fifth one or the sixth one.
Yeah.
You know, and what I'm trying to do desperately is to come back to wherever somebody is in their journey and try to pull them up to where I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just becomes my teachings or my influence to help them on their path.
Yeah.
But from a statistical standpoint, you're probably looking at around 1% in the valley that have an interest towards the river.
Yeah.
And of those that make it to the riverbanks, it's probably only half of those people that actually start to step on the stones.
Yeah. I've had it my whole life.
And
Just
so,
skirting around and going back and forward and back and forward and back and forward. And now it's like, oh, there's nothing else for me, really. I mean, I'm still an entrepreneur and I still have a business and I'm doing those things because I'm doing my work through that. But I feel the call so strongly now that it's like, now is the time. It's especially this moment in time, right? Here we are.
So you know, there might be a bigger reason behind that.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you read The Law of One by chance?
Oh yeah, I haven't read the whole book, but I know it. Yeah.
So the Law of One, how much did you read?
Not very much. I listen to David Wilcock sometimes, and I'm very familiar with it, and I've studied extraterrestrials, and I know what's going on. I follow Laura, and I'm very, I'm right in step with what's happening with Ascension Times, and I've known that this time. I've always known this time would come. I've been talking about it my whole life before when people thought I was nuts or whatever. But I just knew. I knew that the 60s was the beginning of it, and I knew that this was coming. And I didn't know it would be like this. I didn't know those details. But I knew that I would play a role in it and that it was a very important thing for me
So
to be.
what did you conceive your role of being?
Well, I'm a light worker for sure. And I feel that I can assist people in this transition. And I feel I don't know. I mean, I'm writing the book and I don't know how things are all going to play out, but I feel like I am a spiritual teacher and I need to really step up into that, not for an egotistical reason, but for the purity of consciousness and assisting in the ascension and in the shifting of the energy, because I can hold that. I've had mystical experiences. And it's just time for this time. And I need to stop fucking around, basically.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. So, do you want a little more color around it?
Yes, please.
So in the law of one, it speaks of the different levels of consciousness, right? It speaks of the 7 densities of consciousness,
Okay.
which correspond to the 7 chakras, the energy centers of the body, right? Because you have your root ray, your red chakra, followed by your orange, followed by your yellow, right? And so each different density defines a different, it's your evolution, your spirit's progress through its own journey.
Okay.
All right. So you'll have the recording, so you don't have to write this down. I'll yeah, no, trust this. And and we can always talk about it again. This is like a lifetime kind of pursuit. And so if you're being called to this space, like you're truly being called to this space, then there's a good chance you're part of that 1% that is called to the riverbanks, so to speak. Yeah. And the riverbanks is that journey into awakening here within the 3rd density. So this is a 3rd density. It's actually transitioning to a 4th density planet. Yeah. Okay. And so the universe is governed by polarities, like we were describing earlier. For there to be heat, there must be cold.
Yeah.
For there to be up, there must be down.
Right.
Right? Light is dark. But there's also energetic polarities, which in the context of a soul's journey, it can be a positive or a negative. Neither is better than the other. There's simply the polarity. Yeah. And so if your journey is towards service to others, right, it's simply being offset by a journey of those that are in service to self. Okay, that's the polarity of the soul. When I speak of the vibrational energy and the manifestation of the chart, it is to go through enough iterations so that your soul has decided, under the veil of illusion, which is this 3rd density, we have no idea why we're here. It's forgotten, and we have no clarity of how the system works. There's illusion. There's the belief that the physical is the true, but the physical is just the illusionary self. Okay, so your soul incarnates into a physical body, has no idea why it's here, is given a lot of adversity and challenge, and throughout that struggle, it has to choose, am I growing more compassionate because of my pain and struggles to those that are likewise having pain and struggle? Or am I suffering to the point where I can justify exploiting others to be more about me? And that is the polarity of the soul. The Earth itself is moving into a 4th density planet, which will only be habitable by those that are in service to others. Yeah. So future incarnates that have been showing up now are 4th density, early 4th density incarnates that have evolved through the universe to be in service to others. Yeah. The problem is that the 3rd density Earth is a mix of both service to self and service to others in souls that haven't made a firm commitment yet. Yeah. And so the law of one describes how there are higher density souls that have already evolved well beyond 3rd density, who have chosen to come back so that they can help raise the vibrational frequency of the Earth to aid in its transition into 4th density. Yeah. And if you happen to be a wanderer, your vibration is already at an incredibly high level. It is calling you continuously into a state of greater consciousness so that you can fulfill the mission for which you've chosen as part of this incarnation. Yeah. And if that's the case, nothing else will feel nearly as rewarding as this call. Yeah. And to take it one step further, your higher consciousness is constantly dropping information into your conscious mind to affirm for you that that's why you're here. Yeah. So the more time you spend in the practical, well, dilly-dallying, spending time doing what it is not your mission, the more you're going to feel unfulfilled by it, recognizing that there's something greater that's intended for this life.
Yeah.
The challenge is that we have yet to establish a true framework by which wanderers can reach consciousness and understand how they're supposed to fit into the mission that they've been called to.
Yeah.
And that's what's coming next.
Yeah.
Is that framework for wanderers who know that they're here for something greater, they're just not sure where to go next.
Yeah.
And it's to waken them so that they have full consciousness to the reason that they're here, and then allow them to go forth with the gifts and talents that they brought back to then start to change the vibrational frequency of the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So on a planet of 7.7 billion people, there are 80 million wanderers.
Wow.
Just about 1%. And of those, you only have about 1 in 6 or maybe 1 in 8 that have any degree of consciousness.
Wow.
So most of them are still shrouded in the veil of forgetting, or the illusion that is the third density, fourth density. They haven't yet woken up.
I felt it my whole life. I mean, I felt it my whole life. I went and I left school when I was 15. I left home when I was 15. I left school when I was 16. I'm like, I don't need this. This is brainwashing. I'm, just like, what? I moved to Hawaii when I was 17. I lived there for 2 years.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm never going to be a part of society. I'm never going to own a credit card. I'm never going to, study natural health. I was like, little flower child, earth hippie. And I've kept her. She's here, and I've blossomed it into my business where I help people and help musicians find the truth of who they really are. And I created a record label to help them bring that forth, and we're doing it. So but for my own personal journey, it's very important right now that I shift this right now, in this next year.
This is
like right now. Like I need to, yeah.
This is why you contacted me.
Okay.
I mean, I can talk to you about your childhood struggles, but you've been over that and you've come to terms with it. It brought you to a beautiful place. Yeah. And I can tell you more about your energetic imprint and your chart, and that's fine. I can do it in a way that will really connect with your intellect, which is nice. Yeah. But fundamentally, this is why you've contacted me. You may not have known it, but this is why you contacted me.
Yeah.
Because I will start to give you clarity around what it is that you truly are called to do.
Okay. Oh, that's beautiful. Perfect.
Yeah, I don't have all the answers myself. They're still just coming.
Of course.
But it is coming much clearer.
Assist. Yeah, of course.
But that's why your whole, and so some of the harmonization of your energy and coming to that self-awareness part is really just to allow you, through struggle, to make choices that will consciously start to move you to a higher and higher frequency or higher vibration. Because if you are truly a wanderer, you've brought in incredibly high vibration at the soul level. And so the body has to come into alignment with your spiritual energy so that you can go forth and live that most complete existence.
Yeah.
Right? So the egotic mind, especially if it succumbs to the collective consciousness, will be a much lower default vibrational state than what you've brought forth in this incarnation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can feel the change that I'm starting to feel is, whereas that Aries moon or whatever, like things would happen and I'd get triggered and I'd snap or I'd, whatever, is less and less. I have it more and more, I wouldn't say under control. It's more awareness. It's awareness. I choose not to react that way. So I choose not to react that way, and I have a different way than I just be with it, and I don't try to control or dominate.
Yeah.
Although my nature is to do that, but I'm aware of that. But it can also be very helpful. Like I'm seeing the helpful side of, the strengths that I have, and I can see where my weaknesses are and where my disruptive energy is in negative way, and then also in a powerful way, in a positive way. So I can see, and then I'm sure there's some things that I still, but every single day, I mean, you know, one of the things my therapist has always said, and I've been with her for 30 something years, and she's just wonderful, been a wonderful mentor and person, but she doesn't have this spiritual piece, which to me, you know, she does sort of. Her father was a rabbi, but she kind of had it, but she's not really.
Yeah, religion doesn't denote, in my book, doesn't denote spirituality. And if it's at all dogmatic, it's limiting.
Well, and I think I've surrounded myself with people that have an understanding, but they're not really on the spiritual path, because I've had this flutter about it, you know. But now I don't see any other road, because it is what I'm here for, and it is it's what I'm wanting now, you know. It's the only thing that feels important, or, you know, so I'm willing to look at whatever, you know. I can handle it.
Well,
I can hold it.
Yeah, but it's emanating from within. It's not anything that's influencing you externally. It's within you.
Yeah.
It's not that there's anybody else in your world talking about this. It's
me.
It's you. And so it's within you because it was carried into this incarnation. And then there's a download. There's a stream of consciousness that you may not have fully come to terms with. That's actually influencing you as well.
Yeah.
And you'll know it because it gives you excitement.
Okay.
The thoughts that are external from your own will enliven you.
Okay.
You're like,
Okay. Do you see that in my chart? Like, do you see this awakening?
The chart only tells me delayed spiritual awakening.
Okay.
But it doesn't tell me the age of your soul. It doesn't. So if we come back to, I speak of the age of the soul, it's really the spiritual progress that the soul has made.
Okay.
So if we think about a third density is the first level of consciousness. It's the human realm. You have to be a very late third density incarnate to even have a spiritual mindset. Okay. Then you get fourth, fifth, and then sixth density are the most common source for the wanderers who come all the way back to third density to help out.
Okay.
And so for those that are sixth density incarnates, right, the sixth density return to the third, they have evolved. We're talking billions of years of evolution. And they've gone so deep into their own journey into consciousness that the awakening within the third density can happen much faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so the chart doesn't tell me what level of consciousness you are. It becomes my intuition as a conversation unfolds to try to gauge how far somebody is in their journey.
Yeah.
Right? And you can always see it based on that constant tussle between the motivation of the egotic mind and the journey into the spiritual self.
Yeah.
Right. So if I talk to somebody who still hasn't resolved their traumas, is still playing the victim, is otherwise stuck in their own story, I know that they're an earlier third density incarnate. If I speak to somebody who is compelled to do something outside of the consciousness of the collective and feels more than ever that their journey is in service and spirituality, even if they don't necessarily know where to go with that, like they don't have clarity of what to do next, they just have an overriding call to go into that space. And then the more they go into that space, the more they feel that they found where they belong.
Yeah.
And you start to hear things like, I finally feel at home, or I finally felt, after all these years, I feel like I know me, I know where I belong. Like you start to feel resonance with the people who are likewise in that space.
Yeah.
And that's when it all starts to fit together.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never felt like I belonged, or I just always felt like, I see things so differently.
Yeah. And so you didn't come here for you.
Okay.
If you're a sixth density wanderer, this is an if. I can find out if it's something that you are curious about. So if I'll find out for you, actually.
Okay.
Cari, I'll find out and I'll follow up with you. Because if you are in fact a wanderer, then a lot of this conversation may prove premature. My intuition is telling me it's not. But But should you be a wanderer who has in fact come back for this journey, your growth through the third density had been accomplished years earlier. And you actually made your way through the fourth, the fifth, and into the likely the sixth density, and yet chose to come back to aid the planet in an act of philanthropy, to aid the planet in its journey into the fourth density.
Yeah.
Like to put it into perspective, Christ was a late fourth density incarnate. Fourth density is about love and understanding.
Yeah.
Fifth density is about wisdom. Sixth density is the harmonization of the two. Because you don't want to be too loving, because then you're left vulnerable. And you don't want to have pure wisdom, because then you're emotionally disconnected. So you journey into that space, and then you harmonize them in the sixth. Christ had enjoyed his fourth density so much, and he could see the dysfunction of the establishment and the religious tussle 2,000 years ago. So he decided to come back to hope to raise the vibration of the planet in an act of martyrdom, or an act of service.
Yeah.
And so he brought all this wisdom of the fourth density, which is love and compassion and understanding and healing.
Yeah.
And he just nailed it. Like he nailed his mission.
Yeah.
And he elicited the help of the apostles to go ahead and create the right vibration within the group to likewise spread this message and support him.
Yeah.
And those apostles were sixth density wanderers who had likewise come back to support him.
I think that's I think that's what I was, because I was just told that I had, and I was there with him. So I think I was a female disciple, which we're not talked about.
No.
I don't really know, but that's my feeling. And then I was told that you actually carry, I forget what it's called, the Christo, like you have the Christ energy before Christ came, and you were there to assist him.
So which would speak to you being a later incarnate who came back to create the atmosphere that he could go forth in his mission.
Yeah.
It also prepares you wonderfully for the grand mission, which is at hand now, which is the transition into the next density for the planet.
Yeah.
Because that was a transition energetically in that time. This transition is in many ways is quite similar. It just has a different set of challenges, but it's all oriented around consciousness.
Yeah. And vibration and frequency. And yeah.
That's it. And they all play together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's others. There's 80 million of us, but there's not many that realize that they know their call, they're hearing it. They just don't know what to do with it. And unfortunately, media and the distractions will keep them more in the illusion each day.
Yeah.
You know, without stillness, unless their vibration is very strong, without the stillness, they can't see into their intention.
Yeah, no, 100%. I turned off the news.
Yeah.
Turned it off.
I have, this is just beginning for you.
Yeah.
It's just beginning. The call will get louder, and actually it's moving very fast.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking like over the course of this year and into next, you're going to start to see magnificent changes. Actually, remember there is the polarity. So there's that good and the evil, right? So the virus right now is not a natural occurrence.
The what?
The virus, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? This is kind of speaking to the transition of the planet, and there is the positive and the negative. There's the different polarities, but
it's more of a war right now. I mean, I think that negative energy is trying to dominate, and it's losing its grip, so it's pulling out all its cards. It's just more intense, and we're literally at kind of a standstill right now. Like as they pull out every last card, and then nobody knows what to do in a sense, right? And then new energy. The matrix of fear is now replaced with the matrix of love. We're sitting in that new energy, but we're babies.
I know.
Not knowing what to do.
And so what will end up happening, I believe, is that the wanderers will be on the forefront of it, just like Christ and his disciples were on the forefront of a new movement. And the third density incarnates, which are of just earlier stages in their consciousness, will end up gravitating to the teachings of those wanderers.
Yeah.
And so the wanderers will feel the call earliest, and they'll be given the necessary awareness so that they can go forth and fulfill their mission, which will then end up changing the energy for the planet.
Yeah.
But most that are asleep will choose to stay asleep.
I know.
And we have to be respectful, as it's written in the law of one, for those that wish to stay asleep, what more can you do but aid in their slumber? And so at every point, my guess is, and by the way, I'm part of a community. And so in time, you'll start to see that the others that have reached that awakening, like myself, like yourself, will naturally start to become more cohesive. And our priority structure will be such that we'll be in communication with intention. Like there will be different things that we're called to kind of help through. But you have to keep in mind the numbers. If the wanderers represent barely 1%, and of those, I don't know, it's like 10 million out of the 80, and they don't really have true consciousness.
Okay.
Right? They have like, yoga consciousness.
Right.
They have their spiritual practices, but they haven't really woken up yet to the true intention for why they're here. And that's when I say that, it's really they haven't reached that level of vibration where their feelings and their intentionality is pure.
Yeah.
They're still being compelled by the egotic mind and the material self, which is more heavily oriented around, the human desires and temptations.
Yeah.
Or the human traumas and fears.
Yeah.
All right. So it's when they've elevated, when they've reached that level of appropriate vibration, that they've stepped into the light, it's when they'll be able to, it's also for healing, because so many of us are sick.
Yeah.
Right? Wanderers are particularly susceptible to the health struggles. Their vibration just leaves them in a susceptible space. But part of that journey into alignment, because the cells get confused when the physical body's vibration is different from the spiritual energy that's incarnated into it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so at the cellular level, the communication is disrupted. It's unbalanced.
Interesting.
And so the journey for the wanderers is one into consciousness as well as into healing.
Yeah.
And when that's been completed, then you end up getting this beautiful alignment, which allows for them to fulfill the mission.
Yeah.
And I don't know the time frame of it. I don't know the mechanics of it. I'm starting. I've met a number of wanderers, and I have a channeler who is able to bring us the information that we need to start to piece it together. And so it's starting. It's just starting. It's moving. It's moving. From a human vantage point, you kind of want it all like as the same day, but it's moving actually remarkably quickly. It's just unfolding in sequence, kind of the way you'd expect, actually.
Yeah.
But if you want greater clarity, the law of one work, you have to get past the introduction. Seems to be a little bit of a distraction, but when you actually get into the sessions themselves,
okay,
and if it's appealing to you, you can intersperse the fifth book. The fifth book is the personal accounts of what they experienced. The first four books are the metaphysical information that came through the channel. I would read a session or two in the main books and then just skip ahead just for a little bit more human context and read a page or two from the fifth book.
Okay.
And it's all a free download.
Okay.
You can get it from the L&L research website. There was a pure act of service on their part.
Okay.
And it was a spiritual family. It was the guy was a little bit older. The channel was sick. He took care of her. They worked together. And she could drop into what's known as a narrow band, which is complete trance state, where her consciousness was pushed down, and it allowed the sixth density wisdom to just flow right through her and to give all the answers to how the universe operates.
That's amazing.
Yeah, explains the pyramids, explains civilizations, it explains some of the forces of good and evil that operate within the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you read that, if you're truly a wanderer and you get into it and give it the fair time, it will resonate, it will connect with you.
Okay.
You'll just feel like truthful. And if you're not a wanderer, it will bore the hell out of you.
Oh, okay.
Or you just won't get it, or you won't believe it. You'll have some type of negative reaction to it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of your yardstick or your litmus test to give you an indication of if this is your, everything that you've said would indicate that this is why you're here. It becomes automatic after a while. And to be frank, there's other tools that you can start to use to transform the energy or the call into a negative space, but it's
Okay.
not about changing self in the traditional sense. It's about changing what you accentuate.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because, I mean, you can spend the rest of your life in therapy, and therapy can be wonderful. But it's like, okay, how many more years of therapy do we need to really have ourselves figured out?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
and given that we're in duality, that both need to exist, or the opposites need to exist. So at a certain point, I get it.
Yeah, because all that is you is only possible with all that is you.
Right.
Right? Like, and if you are like, wow, I love me. So I can't take a part of you away and still say, we can't
Yeah.
take a part of you away and say, I love me, unless we're saying, okay, I love me except for all these qualities. So I have to get rid of them to really love me.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's kind of bullshit. I love all that is me.
Yeah.
And if we love all as me and we recognize that we all operate with polarities, then we can see that we have good and bad qualities, but that they exist together. And if
Okay.
we take that one step further, and this is it's an African term. I always screw it up. Ubuntu,
Oh, Ubuntu. Yeah.
which is I am because you are,
Okay.
and you are because I am, and we exist because we exist relative to each other,
And we create a whole.
and we create a whole. And so I can't be me. My qualities, good or bad, have no relative framework in the absence of both my qualities, but also the qualities that I can observe in others.
Yeah.
Right? And so if, for example, let's say we're waiting to check out at the grocery store and there's somebody talking on their phone and being really inconsiderate and super loud, or playing their music and whatever it is, you can say that act of inconsideration is a decision that they've made. It's neither good nor bad. It just simply accentuates that my act of courtesy and consideration may become the positive, whereby theirs becomes the negative, and mine is only a positive because they're talking loudly on their phone. I can only exhibit an act of courtesy and compassion in the face of somebody who's being discourteous or non-compassionate. Because if everybody always waiting in line to check out the market was always perfectly prim and proper and quiet and still, then nobody would be standing out for their good behavior.
I see.
It
Yeah.
requires that one person to be obnoxious so that we have a relative framework that we can grow appreciative of good behavior.
So then, in a sense, you start appreciating.
Because you can say, like, if I see somebody that's terribly unhealthy, who's eating terribly, I can say, wow, my good eating habits are only good eating habits relative to their disregard for their physical well-being.
Yeah.
If we were all perfectly healthy, then you don't have anything that stands out in the mix. And that works on any form of judgment, any form of criticism, any moment of contempt or disdain. It's only the negative, the yin within the yang. It's only the polarities that you're observing.
Yeah.
And they only exist as a collective. They only exist because of each other.
Yeah.
And so if you look at it at an individual level, you can be like, wow, I can focus my whole life on the qualities I don't like. But you can say that I only have these qualities because I need them to look at the qualities that I like so much.
Interesting. Yeah.
I can't get rid of all the qualities that I don't like because then there's no relative framework for me.
Yeah.
I can choose how I accentuate and how I vibrate. I can choose where I put my energy in the direction I want to carry myself in. But I don't have to keep rejecting or trying to give up on parts of me that have always been there.
Yeah. And do you think these are parts in the personality or in the soul?
So the soul carries in energy, which carries a lot of contradictions.
Okay.
And so that's a deliberate choice because the soul wants its own polarity.
Okay.
And then the personality itself has to navigate the heaviness of the physical realm. And with
Yeah.
that heaviness comes a lot of struggle. And you have to learn to be strong. And you have to learn to overcome adversity. And sometimes that destabilizes or imbalances us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all expected. That's all part of it.
Yeah.
Christ had all sorts of second guessing and fears on his mission.
Yeah.
It's not documented as well, but Christ was
Yeah.
supported by the disciples, and he was given remarkable powers of healing to allow him to feel so continuously his purpose and his mission being affirmed, which helped
Yeah.
continue to motivate him as he moved down the journey. And there's the apostle, the disciples, they also had certain remarkable powers that helped them to be in support so that they could spread this word and gain the attention that they needed in an otherwise
Yeah.
difficult era.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that becomes the framework that we're going to seek to repeat as the next few years unfold.
Yeah.
But he was a late fourth density incarnate.
Interesting.
And now he's an early fifth density incarnate.
Interesting.
Yeah, but he was surrounded by six densities that came back to aid in that mission. And many of those six densities have stayed here to continue on to await for this cycle.
Yeah.
And so they've spent thousands of years preparing for now.
Yeah.
And that's why you feel it so strongly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why these kind of conversations would resonate with you.
Yeah.
Right? And there will be other spiritualists who will be well-intended. Some of them will be truly on the path. Some of them will just be called into spirituality because it's intriguing for them.
Of course.
It will be your intuition that will separate the wheat from the shaft, right? To try to realize which is which.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of spiritual tourists that can be a bit of a distraction.
I can generally feel it intuitively, empathically.
Yeah.
I can feel like
You're actually the ones that are. What's that?
Like something is off about the vibration. I can feel it. Yeah.
If the ones that are trying the most to convince you or impose what they, to show it, like
Exactly. I know. Yeah. And it's okay, but it's just, I'm happy that I'm at this place now where I can distinguish and discern that difference, and it has to do with energy field and intention. You can feel the intention. I'm empathic, but so you can just feel it.
And that's the whole nature of this conversation is the intention.
Yeah.
Right? It's that whole charity example, like somebody who gives anonymous.
That is so brilliant. That is so perfect. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because when somebody gives a ton of money, they get a lot of press and attention. And people are like, wow, he's so generous. He gave $1 billion to help the virus aid. But if he did it because he's like, if I give this money, I'm going to get so much more attention and that's going to help my business. Go into those different layers. What was my intention behind what Zukov in Seed of the Soul focuses excessively on intentionality juxtaposed to temptation.
Okay.
Right? Because we have endless temptations and it's like, okay, if we are drawn to temptations, do we have recognition of the intention behind what we're doing?
Yeah.
Right. But then to go one step further is, what are your feelings? Like,
yeah.
Like what is it really in your heart telling you? How are you actually showing up here?
Yeah.
You're just, even in an incarnated state, you're 95% love and light. Like that's it.
Yeah.
And so you have to, am I exhibiting light, which is, wisdom, encouragement, support, or am I exhibiting love, compassion, understanding?
I'll have to send you my record because I worked with Don Miguel Ruiz, the Four Agreements author, and did a whole record that was filled with love and light and that vibration. I'd go to the pyramids and then I'd come back and I just channel it into my keyboard or my,
Send it to me. The only agreement that I remember is to be impeccable with your word.
Oh yeah.
That's because your words carry vibration.
Yeah.
And so once it's a good starting point, it's like, okay, what are my actions? I'm going to say things that aren't truthful.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody's deliberately being untruthful, they're moving into a low vibrational state.
Yeah.
Or if somebody is saying things that are not accurate, right? So if you're impeccable, you have accuracy with your language.
Yeah.
Right? It's the intentionality behind the words that you choose.
Yeah. What have you studied? Because you seem so, I'm curious. You seem you're so interesting to me in the way that you've, I can sense the deep spirituality. I can also sense the intellect and, psychology part of it. And you just seem like you have several domains that you've kind of mastered or,
It's all past lives.
Is it?
It's not like there's no degrees on this wall.
Okay.
I have practical success, but that only prepared me for this mission.
Yeah.
I'm it's with humility that I recognize the work of past lives, and then I can feel the consciousness that just the things that I share with you are not originating here. They're just
Yeah,
they're just moving through me at this point.
yeah, yeah.
And so
Beautiful.
I get to play the conduit.
Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, and you'll be doing this. You're already doing it. You'll become stronger.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we're just all different pieces of a very grand, beautiful. It's more of a mosaic. Like if we look at the little tiles, we just see blue and white. But when we take a step back, we see the most spectacular image.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
you're a tile within the most spectacular image.
yeah,
And that image is great inspiration for the planet.
yeah, yeah. Well, my pleasure to have spent this time with you.
No, it's my pleasure too, my dear.